It's been a long, drawn out process between the San Francisco 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. The ups and downs, the roller coaster ride of whether Brandon Aiyuk was going to be with the 49ers or if he was going to be traded. Boy, has this been a long journey. And could we be approaching the finish line? Well, one NFL insider broke it down. It says maybe the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk are closer than we think. Plus, the 49ers worked out some defensive linemen today as well. I'm going to talk about all that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Brandon Aiyuk. And boy, has this been an interesting offseason that I never really anticipated. I just didn't think we were going to get to the point where things were hard to get done between Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers. But it has been tumultuous. It has been up and down. It has felt like a roller coaster ride of emotions from Brandon Aiyuk potentially getting traded close to the draft. A lot of people were speculating. I never thought that was a possibility. Dude, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan said, no, we're not trading Brandon Aiyuk. We plan on him being in San Francisco. To all the just the twists and the turns involving these other teams and trade compensation. And even today, it was more of the same that the 49ers and Steelers had worked out a framework on a potential trade, that they had the money pretty much figured out with Brandon Aiyuk, but that the 49ers had a last ditch effort contract in place to potentially work out a deal with Brandon Aiyuk. And your emotions as fans is definitely going back and forth. And there are some fans that are completely over this conversation completely. There are some that are still highly engaged in it. I haven't touched on it as that much. I know I get asked about it when I'm on, with Mark and the Red and Bold show, and people like to ask in chat. But I was trying to wait until this thing was done. But I think we've got some pretty good information now that could make this thing come and finish finally. We're finally at the finish line, I think. And I say I think because there's no way for me to know. I don't have, a source within the 49ers organization or within Brandon Ayuk's camp that can confirm anything. I think just reading the tea leaves and seeing what some of the insiders are saying, we're now moving to the point where this thing is potentially going to get done one way or the other. And it's starting to look like it's going to trend in the right direction for the 49ers. I put out a tweet earlier today that said, I don't care how long this thing takes. I know a lot of people are done with it. I don't care. I just want the 49ers to make the best decision for the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk to make the best decision for Brandon Aiyuk. And I think if they really look at it, the best decision for both is to stay together. Aiyuk to play with a really good football team, get paid a large amount of money to be one of the best wide receivers in the league, and the 49ers to continue their look and work towards getting to a Super Bowl. And I think that that's exactly what both sides would benefit the most from. And I'm a patient person and I'm waiting upon this to get done. So was it exciting for me to see that potentially it could get done? Yes. And we're going to go through that in just a moment. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, Bet Online is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Well, get in on our winner-take-all 300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, and get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. And so the game kind of started today with a few things coming out from Pittsburgh that potentially the 49ers, and this came out from Diana Rossini and others, that Pittsburgh had somewhat given in and sweetened the pot a little bit for the 49ers, who were seeking more in compensation for Brandon Aiyuk. And so the 49ers apparently got a new offer. They had been reaching out looking for one of those key players, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, maybe Minka Fitzpatrick. Those were guys that were on their radar that they wanted, because when you looked at the makeup of the Cleveland Browns deal and the New England Patriots deal, what you saw was player that could help your football team, and then 2 draft picks, a second-round pick and then a mid-round pick, usually a 5th. And that's what the 49ers method was. That's what they felt compensation was for Brandon Aiyuk. Well, the Steelers weren't willing to do that. They didn't want to part with any players, just wanted to part with picks. So early on, it was a second and then a mid-round pick. And then it looked like it was all the way up to a second and a third. So the thought was today that they had sweetened the pot, maybe even offered 2 2s for Brandon Aiyuk. I can't confirm that, but that was the rumored significant offer that was made earlier in the week. So the 49ers have been thinking upon this. While that's been happening, they have been working with Brandon Aiyuk. So Mike Garafolo came out and said this today, and then this is on the Insider Show on the NFL Network. He said, "What I've been told is that Brandon Aiyuk would prefer to stay in San Francisco with the 49ers and has always preferred to stay with the 49ers, all things being equal." And we know that that is the truth because we've heard Brandon Aiyuk say it. He went on podcasts and he did interviews, and he said his first thing that he would like to do and his first priority was to keep his family in California, to play for the 49ers, but he wanted to make the most money he could make that he felt he was worth. And so it's never been really a question that he wanted to be in San Francisco. That's why when I saw people on Twitter, especially Pittsburgh fans, that says, hey, he just wants to leave, let him go. That was never the truth. He didn't want to go. That's why trade requests that he made seemed to be more about trying to get leverage than it was actually wanting to go away. I mean, think about it. If it was just about the money, the deal with the New England Patriots would have been done. The 49ers were getting a nice haul to do for the New England Patriots, and Brandon Aiyuk was getting a new contract. I mean, if the deal from the Patriots, what I saw was confirmed, a second-round pick, Matthew Judon and Kendrick Bourne for Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers would have done that deal. They still would have had to do something when it came to receiver. That would have been another question. But Brandon Aiyuk was going to make over $32 million a year. If it's just about money, that's what he's doing. It wasn't, because he wants the money, but he wants to be in the best situation, and he knows the 49ers are the best situation. You look at Cleveland, another opportunity, doesn't go there. So it's Pittsburgh and it's the 49ers. But I think it's always really been the 49ers. That's where he wants to be. He's just been trying to find a way to squeeze out that extra money out of John Lynch and Parag Marati's stingy hands. They just don't want to give in. And the reason is they know giving into Brandon Aiyuk now potentially costs them another player down the road. It's the 49ers are stuck in a catch-22. You make that move now, potentially have a chance to win a Super Bowl in 2024, which you know you want. But if you give up too much money, you potentially mortgage a little bit of the future. And of course, they could try to go to veteran players and say, hey, can you give me $1 million here, $1 million there, and offset some of that. But look at what happened with a guy like Kyle Juszczyk. It affected him. He did not enjoy the fact that the 49ers went to him and asked for more money. It hurt him a little bit. He said it hurt his ego. And that's not what the 49ers are about. They know that they have to do this sometimes. It's business. But they want to reward players for the good play. But you can't reward everyone. And so they thought that they were giving Brandon Aiyuk a fair offer at $26 million. And he was willing to take it early on. At some point, of course, we know Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract came down, and that changed Brandon Aiyuk's thought process on what was fair and what wasn't, what was deserved and what wasn't. Since then, the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk have been at odds. But Mike Garafolo says, hey, he wants to be here, and I believe that for sure. Then Garafolo goes on to say, now they haven't been equal, but they did make that offer. In fact, both sides sent proposals with the last, I don't know, couple of days, week or so. So he's saying, hey, it could have been a couple of days, week or so. This is what I'm hearing. And the 49ers number has gotten better than what it was previously. So the 49ers had an offer and they were standing pat, which we know was $26 million annually. According to Mike Garafolo, the 49ers have sweetened the pot and offered more money to Brandon Aiyuk. Now, we know that TJ Hushmanzada, who is his personal wide receiver coach, had went on to KNBR and said, hey, maybe it was 95-7 the game. But anyways, he went on the radio and he said, hey, Aiyuk, $28 million, it's a done deal. And this is interesting because it was TJ Hushmanzada months ago who said, if you give Brandon Aiyuk the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, he'll sign it tomorrow. Well, Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, depending on how you look at it, can either be looked at as a $30 million a year contract or a $28 million contract. So there's a little bit of a difference in discrepancy between the two. So Hushmanzada has been a mouthpiece for Brandon Aiyuk getting that information out there. And I think that the 49ers probably sweeten the deal because they're looking to get this thing behind them. They're looking to get Brandon Aiyuk in camp because they need a top flight wide receiver. It was just last week that the 49ers called around the league, and this was widely reported by several insiders, to check on the statuses of veteran wide receivers. They called Denver, they called Las Vegas, they called others, seeking to potentially have a player that they could trade for, which would mean that maybe they felt they were going to have to trade for Aiyuk and then get that compensation back and make another trade to get a veteran wide receiver in who could play X that they felt comfortable with that could create separation on his own if needed. And the 49ers, all while this is going, are still trying to work on a contract with Aiyuk, but neither side has been willing to budge until now. Something happened to where one of these sides has budged or both sides have budged. I think the best case scenario for everyone involved is if they meet each other in the middle. If the 49ers were at 26 and Brandon Aiyuk's at 28, maybe they could get to 27 or 27.5 and get a deal done that makes him feel comfortable with coming back to San Francisco, because on the field, that's the best situation for the 49ers, is Brandon Aiyuk being in a 49ers uniform and helping this team in 2024 and being a weapon that Brock Purdy can count on, making it a little bit easier for everyone around him. It's just the best case scenario. I understand it from both sides. You don't want to be disrespected if you're Brandon Aiyuk, and you don't want to be taken advantage of if you're the 49ers. You got to make sure that you are built for longevity for the future. So this has been an issue that they continue to work on, but we do know that the 49ers have at least upped the offer a little bit. Garafolo goes on to say, from my understanding, they have agreed on a lot of the main points of the deal. So this is something that now we're starting to get to where it's language as part of the deal. Usually when you start ironing out language and extra points of the deal, you're nearing a conclusion. You're nearing a deal that you can get done. Now, of course, you can come to hangups, and it doesn't mean a contract will be done. But this is good news. If they're ironing out details of a contract and they're agreeing on most of them, that means they're only going to have to compromise in some areas, unless the 49ers have a no compromise on one and and Brandon Aiyuk camp has no compromise. But if not, you would think that this thing is moving in the right direction and potentially Brandon Aiyuk could potentially get it done. Their offers are in line, he said, but it sounds like there's just one more thing that needs to be ironed out. So they're one step away. One more thing needs to get ironed out, and Brandon Aiyuk could potentially put ink to paper and be in camp with the 49ers preparing for the season. This is a lot better news coming from Mike Garafolo than we've got so far. There's been nothing even close to this. There's been a lot of thoughts that he was going to be out the door. I mean, today, it really started feeling like potentially the 49ers were going to make this last effort. And if it didn't work out, they're just going to go ahead and trade Brandon Aiyuk. And at the behest of a lot of fans are just tired of it. And I don't know how to feel about fans that just get tired of it. I'm not one of those people that just get tired enough to, go ahead and trade someone away and spite my own face and potentially run off an opportunity to win a Super Bowl because I was angry at how negotiations went. That's not good business. You just sit back, you wait, and you wait this thing out. Ultimately, it's a waiting game, especially in negotiations. Until there is a firm deadline, negotiations can be stretched as far as you want. And I know people might get tired of it and people might hate it, but it all works out if you wait. It's patience is the key. And the arguments about whether this contract should have been done in March or April, I'm going to leave those out. I'm just going to talk about right now because I don't know the parameters of. I've heard different stories about Aiyuk had a deal on the table that he accepted and then backed out of. I've heard that the 49ers haven't been really willing to go and meet Aiyuk where he wanted his contract to be. Lots of different conflicting stories. We may never know. But I think right now the good news is the 49ers are at the table with Brandon Aiyuk and they're working on something. And Garafolo said, and if that thing gets ironed out, Brandon Aiyuk signs the deal. He stays with the 49ers. He drops the trade request. And finally, he can put this situation behind him and the Niners can put it behind them. So this is as simple as Garafolo's belief is. This contract is ironed out so much that if Brandon Aiyuk says, okay, this one thing, we get it worked out, he's going to sign the contract. That's how close it is. Not, oh, we've agreed to a couple of the parameters, but there's one thing left. Now, it could be a big thing. It could be guaranteed money. It could be the length of the contract. It could be annual salary. I don't know what Brandon Aiyuk wants. Does he want the annual salary to be high enough to illustrate around the league his worth? Would he prefer it just to have more guaranteed money, but doesn't really care what that annual salary looks like? If he worries about what people think around him, he's probably going to want his annual salary to be high. If he just wants to do the best for his family, it's probably going to be a lot of guaranteed money. So I don't know what Aiyuk prefers. And I don't know what kind of safeguards he wants in this contract or structure he wants this built. We know that Parag Marathi a lot of times can structure contracts a certain way. You had Debo get a 3-year contract so that he could potentially get another contract before he's 30. That's something Aiyuk wants, or did he want longevity? Does he want a 5-year deal or a 6-year deal? There's a lot of parameters to be figured out with this Aiyuk deal. But I think the good news is the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk are having good conversations, constructive conversations where they're getting somewhere. They're agreeing on points. And anyone that knows, if you're in any part of negotiations or arbitration, once you can start getting people to agree on certain things, then people are willing to give on some things. Oh, we agreed on this. Oh, you know what? You gave me that. I'll give you this. You know what? That works for me. I can make this work. All those things come into account. So this is great news for the 49ers. And am I telling you that this deal is going to happen tonight, that this deal is going to happen tomorrow? That I don't know. But what I do know is we are the closest we've gotten to Brandon Aiyuk signing a contract with the San Francisco 49ers, an extension, than we've had this entire offseason. And this is great news. This means that Brandon Aiyuk could potentially be the 49ers starting X receiver when we show up week 1 to watch Monday Night Football against the New York Jets. And the truth is, this team is better with Brandon Aiyuk on the field. I don't think anyone argues that. This team is better with Aiyuk. This offense is better with Brandon Aiyuk. And with the weapons that the 49ers have with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk and George Kittle and Jawan Jennings, they are formidable. They are a team that nobody wants to see. In fact, the teams around the league, they want Brandon Aiyuk traded. They want this thing to fall off. They don't want the 49ers at full strength because they can't beat the 49ers at full strength. Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. This football team's led by a great quarterback. We have a great defense that's going to be moving in the right direction. There's a lot to like about the 49ers. And right now, there's been a dark cloud hanging over the 49ers with Brandon Aiyuk. And boy's in a different situation than Trent Williams. And I'll talk about him in a second. But breathe a sigh of relief a little bit. Now, I'm not telling you to don't stop holding your breath because this deal's done. I'm not going to tell you that. But this is the first time in a long time that I feel like a deal could be imminent for Brandon Aiyuk. That Brandon Aiyuk may sign this contract in just the next few days. And potentially the 49ers have their guy. And they can start preparing for the season. And we can put this behind us. And we can start seeing the season take hold. And we can start talking about the fun stuff about NFL football. That's right. The Nick Zakel, Ben Barch competition. That's the kind of stuff I want to talk about. I want to talk about D. Winters and Jalen Graham. And I want to talk about Isaac Yedem and Rock Ya-Sin. Those are the types of things as 49er fans that we want to talk about. But we want our guy in camp too. We want Brandon Aiyuk on this team. We want him to be making an impact. And this is the best situation. No trade that we have seen presented from Pittsburgh was going to make this a win for the 49ers. None of it. They weren't willing to give any players. They weren't willing to give us a wide receiver. They just weren't willing to do it. We are the 49ers. We don't trade players for pennies on the dollar. We go get players for pennies on the dollar. The 49ers make trades for Trent Williams and basically give up nothing. They trade for Christian McCaffrey and reap the benefits of. They trade for Charles Omenihu and turn him into a big-time star. That's who the 49ers are. They win trades, especially player trades. So this deal with Pittsburgh didn't really make sense. I was shocked when I heard they agreed to parameters. I wonder what the upgrade was. Maybe that'll eventually come out, but I hope it comes out after the report that the 49ers have agreed to sign Aiyuk. We'll see if it happens, but there was also a little bit of information about Trent Williams that I want to get to. So left tackle Trent Williams has basically been kind of on the shelf. We haven't heard anything about the conversation. Kyle Shanahan doesn't give any sort of inclination. He just says he feels optimistic about it. Well, Diana Rossini came out today and said that Trent Williams and the 49ers are no closer to getting a contract extension done. However, he's very confident that it's going to happen. So it's that weird feeling like we all know that this thing's going to happen. At some point, Trent Williams is going to decide he's ready to come in. And I feel like it's going to be the 2 weeks to prepare for the season. The 49ers will have a structure of a contract that makes sense, that makes him the highest paid offensive tackle in the entire league, but is structured correctly to make sure that it doesn't hurt the 49ers' immediate future. And I think Trent Williams will get in. But getting this first domino of Brandon Aiyuk done, I think will kick the Trent Williams deal into high gear, and they'll get that one done. So we could be looking at a couple of deals coming in the next couple weeks, hopefully, for the 49ers. And then it can be all about ball. Because the 49ers, that's what's funny. The press conference yesterday, Chris Conley said, "What do you like about San Francisco?" He says it's all about ball. And that's exactly what you want from your organization. When you have that mindset and that attitude, that's how you win football games. But the 49ers have had some things contract-wise that are hanging over their head. And they've got to get it done. They've got to bring this thing together. And I think when they do, imagine the optimism that's going to potentially happen with a Brandon Aiyuk contract, a Talanoa Hufanga being cleared and ready to return to the field, and then a Trent Williams contract extension. All this stuff could be happening pretty soon. Plus, there's going to be a lot of players coming back from injury. Some guys already did. Fred Warner, foot irritation, back at practice. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, back at practice. You're going to see these guys. Danny Gray was practicing, blue vest, but practicing. We're going to see players returning, and that number of players injured is going to start going down because, like Kyle Shanahan said, it's 3 to 10 days for most of those guys. Now, the 49ers also brought in some guys, and if I'm sure you guys know by now, Kalia Davis is going to be out for half the year. So we talked about them potentially going out and getting a defensive line, but we didn't know who that was going to be. Well, this is according to Aaron Wilson. He put this out that the 49ers worked out 3 defensive tackles, and we'll see. There's another guy released today. We'll get into that later to see if he's potentially going to be added to this list. But they worked up Abdullah Anderson, they worked out Marquise Copeland, and they worked out Nicholas Williams. So 3 names. Nicholas Williams a little bit on the older side, been around the league for a while. But all these guys, the 49ers brought in to work out. They're looking for more defensive line depth to help this 49ers team as they try to potentially replace, the back end roster spot of Kalia Davis. And I don't know if any of these guys have a real shot to be a starter, but I think that they've got a chance to potentially help this 49ers roster because 49ers right now are looking for somebody to step in. If just the early results of the preseason game, and I've done my first half breakdown, offense and defense. Those are on Patreon, and those are available if you want to go watch and break down every single play from my perspective, the way that I did when I was a coach, to the players. And so I go through the techniques, what they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to be, which plays were good, which plays were bad, how they executed. And there's always a lot there. So if you guys are interested in that, go check it out. But I didn't think Evan Anderson and Shaquille Brown had a good enough game for everyone to feel confident with one of them being able to fit into that fifth spot. And, that's unfortunate because you were hoping one of those guys was going to step up, but they're not yet there yet. The guy who looked phenomenal was Kalia Davis. But unfortunately, Kalia Davis is going to be out, and that's tough. And so you gotta look to build more depth, bring more guys in as part of the rotation. That's what the 49ers are going to do. Now, don't be afraid. I know Kalia Davis being injured is going to be frustrating, but don't worry about it. They've got really good players like Malik Collins, like Jordan Elliott. Kevin Givens played good in the preseason game as well. Those guys are still going to be there and still be impactful, but the 49ers are looking for the bottom part of the roster. Now, there was one more thing. Chris Conley, I brought him up earlier. We said it was about ball. He said it was all about ball. It's all about ball, and it's doing what's necessary to win. I thought that was great. But then when you talk about him, he had some really good things to say about about Coach Kyle Shanahan. He said, Kyle's great. I love Kyle. Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading a Belichick thing. I thought I was reading the Chris Conley one. Because Conley had some great things to say about it. He says, and he said, I've always been someone who's loved when people harp on detail. And Kyle Shanahan is one of the most detailed coaches I've been around. I can't really think of many others who are that detailed. And that attention to detail, that attention to intensity, intent is integral in putting the 49ers helmet on. This is a guy that's been around a little bit. It's been in a locker room with Andy Reid. And he's saying he's one of the most detailed coaches I've been around. I can't really think of anyone that's more detailed. High praise for Kyle Shanahan. And I think that's why the 49ers are successful, the attention to detail. And there's a lot of work that has to be done from a practice standpoint, from a film study, from the meetings, from this coaching staff, getting those players in line. But I love that. And I like this too. He said, and Shanahan makes no mistake about letting people know, hey, you have to earn it. You have to earn everything here. Everything is about doing things the right way and attacking it. That's something I believe in too. So this is a contrary remark compared to what you got from Willie Snead, where he said, guys, we're given things. Here you have somebody saying, no, you have to earn it. And so it's pretty cool to hear. That's the culture that's within the 49ers organization, and probably a reason that even though the offseason has been so tumultuous, Brandon Aiyuk still wants to be in San Francisco with the 49ers in this culture with these teammates. I think it's going to work out at some point. The 49ers are going to get this done. But good news, Mike Garafolo reporting that Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers are one step away, one more agreement from this contract being signed, and hopefully he'll be back in San Francisco helping the 49ers get back to the Super Bowl and maybe this time getting it done. Thanks for everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers.